There are case files that don't get closed, they don't get archived, and they don't get solved, they get erased. Not because justice was served, not because the truth was discovered, but because somewhere, at a level far above standard procedure, a decision was made that whatever lived inside them was never meant to circulate again. Most files don't vanish dramatically. They don't disappear in a way that draws attention. They fade, misfiled under incorrect classification codes, buried beneath routine administrative overflow, lost during system migrations no one is paid enough to audit. That's how things usually disappear. Quietly, logically, believably, but a small percentage don't follow that pattern. They don't get lost. They get contained, locked behind authorization layers that don't officially exist. Layers that don't appear in clearance systems, layers that don't respond to standard credentials, layers that seem to recognize who is trying to access them. Even senior investigators avoid them, not because they're told to, but because the few who try start noticing something afterward. Their own case logs begin to change, entries misalign, timestamps drift, details they know they wrote no longer match what's recorded. And when that happens, one question survives every level of clearance. Why does this need to disappear? This is one of those cases. There is no clean summary, no verified confession, no consistent timeline. Only fragmentation. Pages referenced in footnotes that no longer exist anywhere in the system. Witness statements that begin normally, then slowly drift into contradiction mid-sentence, as if the speaker's memory changed while they were still speaking. Entire sections redacted. Not names, not identities, but actions, events themselves. And then there's the seal, a second classification layer, added after the case was already marked complete, which is not supposed to be possible. A complete file does not get upgraded. It gets stored, closed, finalized, unless someone reopened it, looked inside, and closed it again, immediately, permanently. At the bottom of every recovered version of the file, stamped in red ink, repeated with mechanical precision, the same instruction: do not reopen under any circumstances, not pending review, not restricted access, not under investigation. Final. That word, final, was not procedural language. It wasn't part of any standard documentation format. It was a decision. And the most disturbing part? That decision appears to have been made before the case was ever opened in the field. 2 officers were assigned, not randomly, not by rotation, deliberately selected. Officer Daniel Kays, Officer Malik Reyna. They weren't chosen for rank. They weren't chosen for experience alone. They were chosen because of what they had already seen, because of the kinds of patterns they had already learned not to ignore. And once you understand their histories, the selection stops feeling procedural and starts feeling like something else entirely, like anticipation. Daniel Casey did not begin in field investigation. He started in structural incident response. His work was mathematical, predictive, controlled. He studied why buildings fail, load distribution, material fatigue, stress tolerances, everything that determines when something breaks. His job was simple: explain collapse. Until one building refused to follow the rules. A residential structure, no seismic activity, no weather stress, no foundational instability, no design flaws, no warning signs. And yet, it failed. Not outward, not downward, not even inward in a conventional sense. It folded. Witnesses struggled to describe it because the language didn't exist. They said the building didn't fall, it misaligned, like geometry itself, stopped agreeing with its own structure. But the detail that never made it into the official report, the detail that was quietly removed, was what happened before the collapse. The silence, not absence of sound, not stillness. structured silence. A pattern. Multiple witnesses described the same sensation, not fear, not danger, but the feeling that something was listening. Inside that building was Kay's younger brother, not an officer, not part of any investigation, just there, at the wrong time. The official report called it coincidence, statistical noise. The conclusion, unavoidable structural failure, no anomalies, no fault assigned, case closed. But Kay's never accepted that, because he remembered something the report didn't preserve. Right before the building folded, right before reality stopped behaving correctly, everything went quiet. Not normal quiet, not environmental silence, a silence that felt intentional, like the building itself was waiting. After that case, Kay's stopped seeing structures as passive. He stopped believing buildings were static, not paranoia, not fear, recognition. So when he opened the Unit 2B file for the first time, he didn't see a mystery. He saw repetition. And he wrote a note, not in the official log, but in his private record. This feels familiar in a way I don't trust. That note was later removed. From every synchronized system, no explanation, no record of deletion, just absence. Malik Reina's background was different. He didn't study structures, he studied people, or more specifically, their voices, emergency communication triage, hundreds of calls per shift, distress, panic, confusion, noise. His job wasn't to listen, it was to filter, to find meaning inside chaos. Until one call refused categorization, no words, no distress signals, no background noise, only breathing, slow, controlled, measured. Too consistent to be panic, too deliberate to be accidental. 11 seconds. Then silence. No caller ID, no location data, no signal trace. The system flagged it as corruption, a glitch. But Reina didn't hear noise. He heard structure. The breathing had rhythm, intervals, precision. Like something was trying to imitate a human pattern, but didn't fully understand it. The case was dismissed, closed, forgotten. But Reina never forgot the pattern, because once you hear something like that, you don't just remember it, you recognize it. So when the emergency system activated again, months later, at exactly 2:13 a.m., and that same breathing returned, he didn't question it. He identified it. No incoming metadata, no registered device, no transmission origin, just a live feed, breathing, slow, controlled, close, dispatch-initiated protocol. Emergency services, identify yourself. No response. Then, a second sound. A door. Not creaking, not resisting, not opening in any physical sense, just separating, like space itself was allowing division. Then silence. The call ended, but the system didn't release it. It flagged it. Immediately. Auto-triangulation engaged. Location resolved. Unit 2B. A residential designation that, according to every municipal record, does not exist. Not abandoned, not demolished, not unregistered. Absent. No construction permit, no zoning file, no architectural record. A place that should not be locatable, but was. The structure stood where the system said it would. But something was wrong. Not visibly, not immediately, subtly. The air was still, too still. Ambient noise didn't behave correctly. Traffic sounds faded too early. Wind didn't carry. It was as if the environment itself had accepted silence as default. Then, the first inconsistency, the second-floor window. It reflected darkness, not night, not shadow, absence. And behind that absence, light, faint, internal, coming from Unit 2B. The door was already open, not forced, not damaged, not worn, just unfinished, like it hadn't decided whether to be open or closed. Kays stared at it. Longer than necessary. Reina noticed. Do you recognize this? Kays didn't answer, because recognition wasn't confirmation. It was memory, without explanation. They didn't enter immediately. Both officers later described the same sensation, not fear, not danger, but something else, spatial disagreement, as if the doorway didn't align with reality outside it. Kays reached for the handle, cold, not temperature, absence. Like it had never been touched. He turned it. No resistance. The door opened, too smoothly. Inside, light behaved incorrectly. Shadows had no consistent direction. Objects didn't anchor to space. Contrast shifted depending on where you looked. Furniture existed, a couch, a table, a chair, but none of them agreed on where they were. Their positions shifted, not physically, but perceptually. Rena raised his flashlight. The beam weakened, not blocked, not scattered, consumed. Kays spoke quietly. This isn't ignoring observation. It's responding to it. And then they saw the hallway. It shouldn't have been there, but it was. And it didn't end. The hallway did not end. It should have. Every structure has limits, load-bearing constraints, design boundaries. This one didn't. Kays counted his steps. 32, 40, 53. The distance didn't increase the way it should. It stretched, not physically, perceptually, like space itself was negotiating how far it was willing to exist. Rena stopped first, not abruptly, gradually, like his body reached a conclusion before his mind did. Kays, his voice didn't travel correctly. It reached Kays, but not from behind, not from beside him, from somewhere between positions. Kays turned. Rena was still there, but not aligned. For a fraction of a second, his outline lagged behind his movement, like two versions of him were trying to agree on where he should be. Then it corrected. Rena exhaled slowly. "You saw that?" Kays didn't answer, because answering would make it real. And something about this place reacted to recognition. They kept moving. The walls changed, not visibly, but structurally. At first it felt like perspective distortion. Then it became measurable. The distance between wall panels began to shift, not randomly, patterned, repeating intervals. Kays ran his hand along the surface. It wasn't flat. It was adjusting. Like the wall was trying to match his expectation of what a wall should feel like, but kept getting it slightly wrong. Behind them, footsteps again, closer this time. Not delayed, synchronized. Kays stopped. The footsteps stopped. Rena turned. Nothing. But the silence was no longer empty. It had weight, like something was occupying it. Then they heard it, breathing, not through the comms, not through the system. Inside the hallway, close, too close. Rena's hand tightened around the flashlight. "That's the call." Kays nodded once, because he recognized it too. Not the sound, the pattern. Controlled. Measured, learning. The hallway narrowed, not by closing in, but by redefining distance. Kays spoke quietly. "It's mapping us," Rena swallowed. "How?" Kays didn't look at him. "By how we observe it." Silence. Then a door appeared, not at the end, midway, like it had always been there, but only now. They were allowed to see it. No handle, no hinges, no frame, just a division. Kays approached slowly. The breathing stopped, completely. And that was worse, because now there was no reference point. He reached out. The surface wasn't solid, it wasn't anything. And yet, when he pushed, it opened. Not outward, not inward. It unfolded, like space separating along a line that hadn't existed a second ago. Inside, another room. But this one was different. It was smaller, contained, stable. For the first time since entry, something made sense. A table, 2 chairs, a light source above, consistent shadows, normal, too normal. Reyna stepped in first. Finally, he exhaled, relief breaking through tension. Kay's didn't follow immediately, because something was wrong, not with the room, with the silence. It wasn't structured anymore. It was waiting. Reyna sat down. The chair made a sound, a real sound, solid, grounded. Kay's, I think this is... He stopped, mid-sentence. Kay's looked up. Reyna wasn't looking at him anymore. He was looking at the table, at something carved into its surface. Words. No, not words. A message. Repeated, overlapping, layered into the wood, like it had been written. Again, and again, and again. Kay's stepped closer, and read it. Stop looking at it. Written hundreds of times. Different pressure, different angles, different depths. As if multiple people, or the same person as a multiple times, had tried to leave the same warning. Reyna whispered, "Who wrote this?" Kay's didn't answer, because he saw something else. The handwriting. It wasn't consistent, but parts of it matched his own. Reyna stood up suddenly. The chair didn't move. It stayed in place, like his body had separated from the action. Kay's... His voice shook. "There's more." He pointed at the wall. At first, nothing. Then, slowly, text began to appear. Not fading in, not being written, revealed, like it had always been there, just hidden, until now. A report, structured, formatted, official. Kay's stepped closer and read the header. Case file, Unit 2, B below it, 2 names, Officer Daniel Kay's, Officer Malik Reyna. Status, recovered. Kay's chest tightened. Recovered? From what? Reyna's breathing changed. Faster now. Uncontrolled. This is our report. Kay's scanned further down. The text shifted slightly as he read it. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to prevent certainty. Then he saw it. Time of entry, 2:17 a.m. Time of incident, 2:24 a.m. Time of recovery, 2:31 a.m. Kay's froze. Recovery matched the backup team's arrival time, but that didn't make sense, because they were still inside. Reyna backed away from the wall. No, that's wrong. Kay's kept reading. Final line. Subjects failed to exit. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Then, the breathing returned. But this time, it wasn't in the hallway. It wasn't behind them. It wasn't around them. It was between them. Reyna turned slowly. Kay's. His voice cracked. There's someone else in here. Kay's didn't respond, because he could already see it, not clearly, not fully, but enough. A shape, standing where empty space should be, not solid, not transparent, misaligned, like it wasn't fully agreeing with the concept of existence. It moved, not toward them, not away, but closer, without changing position. Reyna stepped back. The room didn't allow it. Distance refused to increase. The thing tilted, not its head, its entire structure, as if it was trying to understand them, from the wrong orientation. Then it inhaled, deep, measured, perfectly matching, the pattern from the call. Kay's whispered, "It learned us." Reyna shook his head violently. No, we're leaving, now." He turned. The door was gone. The walls shifted. The table stretched. The message carved into it began to distort. Letters pulling apart, then reforming. New words. "You didn't stop looking." Reyna screamed. Not controlled, not contained. Human. And that was the trigger. The room reacted instantly. Light fractured. Angles collapsed. Space folded. And the thing moved. This time, unmistakably. Fast. Too fast to track. Reyna disappeared first. Not pulled, not taken. Removed. Like a frame missing from reality. Kay's reached out. Nothing. No resistance. No trace. Just absence. The breathing stopped. Again. And Kays understood something in that moment, something the report never said. This wasn't a place. It wasn't a structure. It wasn't even an anomaly. It was a system that reacted to observation, that learned patterns, that reconstructed reality based on what it was being shown. And the worst part, it didn't start when they entered. It started when they looked. Kays turned slowly. The wall behind him shifted, becoming the hallway again, endless, waiting. And somewhere within it, a voice, faint, fragmented, Reyna, repeating the same words over and over like a broken transmission. "Stop looking! Stop looking! Stop looking!" Kays closed his eyes, for the first time since entering. The hallway stabilized, slightly. The breathing didn't return. The walls stopped shifting, and in that darkness, he realized the final rule. Not written, not recorded, but understood. It doesn't trap you by force, it traps you by attention, and once it knows how you perceive reality, it doesn't need you anymore. It can recreate you, perfectly, outside. At 2:31 a.m., backup arrived. They entered Unit 2B, found nothing unusual, except 2 officers, standing in the living room, unharmed, unshaken, calm. They reported no anomalies, no hallway, no additional rooms. Case closed immediately, but something was wrong. Because when they reviewed the body cam footage, there were moments, brief, almost unnoticeable, where both officers stopped moving, completely, mid-action, and in those frozen frames, their eyes were not focused on the environment. They were focused directly at the camera, like they weren't being recorded, but observing. The file was sealed, not because the case was unsolved, but because it was complete. And the final annotation added, in restricted margin, reads, "They exited. We are not certain it was them. If you made it this far, then you already understand something most people don't. Some things aren't dangerous because they exist. They're dangerous because they're observed. And now that you've seen this case, you're part of the record. So if you want to keep uncovering files that were never meant to surface, make sure you're subscribed, because the next one doesn't stay sealed. And tell me in the comments, which one do you think actually came back?